Good morning. Thank you for watching Taxes Made Easy, either live or on rebroadcast. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about some of the positive things the IRS is doing. It's harder than ever. If you've tried calling the IRS, it's harder than ever to actually get through to somebody. So how do you get information? How do you get answers from the IRS to answer your questions and without having to pay a tax professional to do it? The easiest answer is IRS.gov. And we're going to really dive into IRS.gov, what it can do for you. I do think this is one of the positive developments the IRS has undertaken and can definitely help you. You just have to go in and share all kinds of personal information, do a face scan, etc. As a tax professional, I've had to do that just to continue working with the IRS, which I don't think is reasonable, but when did reasonable come into the equation? So again, a lot of good information today. Stick with us. Welcome back, everybody. Got some local stories here to share, and I'm just going to share these one by one. Some of these, they're very local. And this talks about a grocery tax in Oregon. And it's just a 1% tax, but again, grocery tax is considered to be very regressive because the poor have to eat just as well as the rich, and they're usually paying similar prices depending on where they're shopping. So again, when it comes to grocery tax, it's usually a fairly regressive tax, and they're usually frowned upon. But here in Oregon, they had a 1% tax. It was suspended due to COVID to help people out with inflation. Well, it's suspended during 2022. And it saved them $3.5 million. But who is it costing? So ironically, here you have a governor, a Democrat governor, offering, hey, let's get rid of this tax permanently. But Republican-leaning communities are saying, no, keep it in place. So role reversal here. The question is why? Because who does it hit? In this case, it hits the local communities. One local community, small communities looking to lose $40,000, which means they'd have to fire one of their employees. And Oregon would see the smallest impact compared to the communities that have published their submitted losses so far. So really, when you're looking at taxes, is this a good tax, bad tax? Who does it hurt? Too often, and again, this is done on purpose. This happens, this is a concern happening in Nebraska at the same time with some of the property taxes that we've talked about, is when you have state governments aggregating more power to themselves rather than having those decisions being made locally, makes it harder for people. The further away government is from the people, the less say you have in it. So that's why I guess there's a big push to keep these local, keep it so that the communities can continue to thrive. And depending on the locality, it can hurt pretty bad, and how big they are. So so it comes, kind of goes back into the details here, but we're going to move on. Another local tax that's being prepared or suggested here, California is trying to do something other than the just straight gas tax. Now, there's a few reasons for this. First of all, by putting more and more EVs on the road, they're heavier on average due to the batteries, and they do just as much damage to the road, but they're not getting money from the gas taxes. So they're thinking about ditching the state's gas tax, which is one of the highest in the country, and they're testing out different models to try to see what they can do here. So again, at 58 cents per gallon gas tax just for state taxes, very high. So one of them is a flat per mile rate. So if you don't commute very far, you won't have to pay very much. But again, if you don't have if you're not commuting very far, you're not paying a lot of tax. And another one is an individualized rate based on a vehicle's fuel efficiency. Well, what does that do for EVs? And part of the problem here is when you have too many EVs, they're not purchasing tax, they're not paying into the roads and maintenance. And again, it becomes a problem when you have the roads being starved for funds. So again, another couple local taxes where they're trying to figure out how to fund, you know, again, taxes are necessary for our roads, for our maintenance, but how do you do it in a way that doesn't cause more problems than it fixes? So again, you got a lot of balancing and things, and I do think it's good that they're trying and considering other options. How that's going to play out is yet to be seen. So next tab again, April inflation year on is 3.4%, which isn't horrible, but still on top of already in high inflation from last year. And they really want long-term the rate to be around 2%. So this article has some, it's kind of a mixed bag here. Again, it just rose 0.3% April to March, but again, this is based on the CPI that excludes some of the biggest energy increases. So energy went up 1.1% as gas continues to go up. And then you talk about food items, for all items less food and energy. So yeah, it is an increase of 0.3%. But when you look at food and energy, those are the two that are really driving things to go up. So people are looking at this, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? One thing I want to kind of go over, and this is to understand since January 21, and again, not trying to, the problem with inflation, you can go back and say, look, we had all this spending, caused all this inflation. Was it due to, who's responsible? Well, President Trump signed on to all the stimulus spending that everybody clamored for, the PPP, the EIDL loans, all these different things, and government programs to just throw money out to people post-COVID. Now, it was both parties that were on board with that, and that was just continued under the Biden administration. What happens when you throw money out there? Inflation obviously happens. So this isn't just due to Biden, but again, it mainly happened during the Biden administration. Groceries are up 21%, rent is up 20%, electric bills up 28.5%. Auto insurance, this is where people are getting killed and it's still going up. 52%, eggs up 43%, baby food and formula up 30%. So there's definitely a lot of inflation that has happened in the last 3 years. I think rent's up probably more than 20% in many areas of the country. So who's responsible? That's another, I'm not even going to go in there. I think that it is important to see and understand that it is continuing to climb, but just at a lesser rate, but it's climbing. That's 0.3% from the high of last year, where things jumped up a lot faster. Things are still increasing, just at a slower rate, but they're still going up. And as interest rates go up, again, the Fed is concerned about that and still itchy about raising rates. So I've got a couple articles about the IRS. First one here, and I spoke to someone yesterday about this. So remember the stimulus funds that we talked about? Part of that is for 2020. There's $1,000 stimulus for filing your 2020 return. About 1 million Americans haven't claimed it. So the deadline is tomorrow. And I have touched on this before, but it's a healthy reminder that tomorrow is the last day to get this in, to get your taxes in. They just need to be filed by the deadline. So if you haven't filed and you have a simple return from 2020, you can go in and get that filed. If you can go to H&R Block, you can go to any of these free sites. You just need to make sure that it's filed by tomorrow, either postmarked or filed electronically by tomorrow if possible. So And then you can also have the 2020 earned income tax credit, can provide up to $6,160. So there are plenty of benefits out there to just file in your return. After 3 years, there's no refunds. So that's why May 17th really is the drop dead date. After you pass that 3-year period, they're not going to give you a refund for what you were due. You can still be, you can still be required to file the tax return, however, and any balances due, they'll still come after you for any balances, but you're not going to get any refunds if you were due any refunds. So again, and the stimulus credit, you'll get that regardless of whether or not you owe money or not. So again, a lot of people don't realize they're owed a tax refund, especially students, part-time workers. If you're not sure, look into it. So we're going to jump to this next article, still on the Newsweek. Again, they talked about this yesterday, and I went over the broadcast warning, or the actual publication where the IRS warned about listening to scams. And this is a little bit of freaking out here, but it is a form of tax fraud to fraudulently file a tax return and get refunds that you're not entitled to. Rarely happens. So this is a little bit of, hey, let's freak people out. Let's clickbait here. That thousands of taxpayers could face jail time. Very, very unlikely unless this is really egregious, and when you're called out on it, you fight them, you do everything wrong. But most of these refunds are in the thousands of dollars, less than $10,000. They just want you to correct it. So the big thing here is, if you fell victim to a tax scam, inaccurate social media advice, this is the big one. If you go to someone and they tell you, hey, I'm going to get you the biggest refund ever, warning bells should be going off on your head. If someone promises that, they're probably not the best preparer. They're probably going to get you into trouble. So check around. If you have something simple, you can use TurboTax, H&R Block. If there's any layers of complexity to it, I would definitely at least talk to a CPA. Now, it doesn't mean you can't file right away to meet that deadline for 2020, and there's also refunds for 2021. Next year, we'll be seeing the same thing. Hey, the deadline for 2021 refunds is fast approaching. Just to try to get people out there. There's still people that don't know about it. Like I said, I just talked to someone, said, look, here's your information. We've already given it to you. Take it in someone. Let's get this done. Let's get you your refunds. So again, be very careful what you listen to on social media, and we're hitting another break, so we're going to be back in just a short while. Thank you for sticking with us here at Taxes Made Easy. Got a little bit more I want to cover on this last article that we were talking about. I'm not sure I've even shared it. So this last article, like I mentioned, the headline is a little doom and gloom. I don't think most people are facing jail time if you listen to these scammers, but you're gonna get hit with extra penalties and interest, so it's never worth it. Costs you more money. But one of the things I want to be aware of, I want people to be aware of here, you can face steep financial penalties. That is very, very true. That's only the maximum amount for tax fraud, 3 years, depending on how many charges you have. But almost nobody's going to go, very, very few people are going to go and be prosecuted for tax fraud unless you sit there and fight the IRS tooth and nail. You lie, you try to hide information. And again, it's just not a good idea. It creates more problems than it's worth. So what do you do if if you think that might be the case? Go talk to someone else, get a second opinion, and you can always file an amended return. You can go in and fix it yourself and avoid. If you fix it before they find it, then you're fine. You might have to pay back some refunds that you got that you weren't eligible for. But one of the things it does is, this article does is it really it touches on the biggest two tax issues that are being claimed. So again, if they find you, they're getting caught during their fraud review process. It's going to be a very long and detailed, painful process. And if they're owed a refund for other things, it can delay other tax returns. It can cause more scrutiny in your case, onto your other returns as well. So again, this is can be a years-long process. If you have to hire someone to defend you or deal with the taxes, if you're not sure how to handle these, it's absolutely not worth it to do this. So again, I joke around that the best way to save money on taxes is to do it right the first time. So you never need to hire a tax law firm like us. The two main things that people are claiming, the fuel tax credit. This is designed for off-highway business and farming use. So this is actually a very narrow credit. Most people, the vast majority of people, do not meet this criteria. And I've seen this time and time again. The sick leave and family leave credit, it was available just to self-employed workers 2020 and 2021, not for 2023. So anybody filing this form 7202 to claim the credit, it's done incorrectly. And it's going to get rejected. You're going to get have your refund. You're going to have to owe back any refunds that you received. And again, it's one of those things. If it sounds too good to be true, again, this is just due to bad advice, and avoid the trendy stuff online. So we're gonna go and we're gonna share some more articles, but this is really gonna go into the IRS. How do you get good information? I don't know what is with my face being so dark. How do you get good information? And that's the trick with the IRS, is getting good information, reliable information that you don't have to worry about. So one of the bigger concerns here is it's harder than ever to get through to the IRS. It's hard, and they give bad advice all the time. So how do you know what is good advice and what isn't good advice? So if you have a company set up and they have a website, and if they're putting out material, just like I'm doing, there's a lot of material out there. Try to use reputable companies, tax law firms, CPA firms that have been established, they've been around, they have good credentials. If you just read something on the internet, some fly-by-night guy throwing out advice, it's probably going to be wrong. Be careful of the source. If it's just about filing taxes, especially simple taxes, Intuit, TurboTax, they have a lot of articles out there. But when it comes to dealing directly with the IRS, I've seen glaring mistakes in their articles. They just don't know. It's not their cup of tea. It's not what they do. And so the problem is, take it with a grain of salt. If it's about a simple tax return, they can probably share a lot of good information. If it's about filing a tax return, it's about dealing with tax issues after you owe, I would not rely on Intuit. I would definitely go to someone that specializes in tax debt resolution, working directly with the IRS to resolve those issues. Now, one of the biggest questions, especially for people trying to get their returns filed, how do I get my transcripts? Well, the easiest way is through IRS.gov. If you can call the IRS and they'll mail it to you, which doesn't really help at this point. You can even, my goodness, I don't know what, my camera's just lit up. You can call the IRS, you can try to get that information over the phone, but really you need a tax transcript to give the proper information, all the information that was on your W-2 except for your state withholdings. Many states do keep that information for what was withheld from your state, so many times we end up calling the state and the IRS. IRS to get the transcripts, states to get the state withholdings, and with that information you can go prepare your returns. So key here is have good information, have it on hand, and then take that to a tax professional that specializes in what you need. Again, if you have a more complicated return, reach out to an excellent CPA, shop around, make sure that you have someone that's good, that's been around, and has a lot of experience doing what you're doing. Handling the kinds of cases or tax returns that you that matches what you need to have prepared. Again, if you have questions, you just don't feel comfortable reaching out to a tax preparer, we have excellent CPAs across the country that we can refer you to. There's some that we know very well that are more local to us. And it doesn't matter where you live, anybody can prepare your tax returns, but long term it helps to be able to go on. A lot of people want to see the person face to face, and we can usually find someone local to you anywhere across the country. Now, how do you get this good information? How do you get good information from the IRS? I called at 6 a.m. and I was calling the specialty department, but at 6 a.m. as soon as they opened up, I called 3 times, couldn't get through. And it's Wednesday. No, today's actually Thursday. Their busiest days are Monday, Tuesday. It's not supposed to be this bad later on in the week. I've called this department about 6 other times this week, can't get through. What's going on here? The problem is the IRS is putting a lot of money into improving their online services, but they are still very much behind about providing better customer service. They're overwhelmed when it comes to their IRS lines, and most of the time when you call in, you don't get someone that knows what they're doing. You get people that are lost, that are confused. And even as a tax attorney, I have people give me bad information, wrong answers all the time. And more than ever, we're not getting any kind of response. So again, imagine if we're struggling as tax practitioners, attorneys, enrolled agents, except CPAs, dealing with an IRS that is very much, they're not trained, they're not up to speed, and the service is worse than ever. Imagine how hard it is for average taxpayers. Now, when's the best time to call the IRS? Between 5 to 7 p.m., ideally later on in the week. But I really want to dive into what is the IRS doing that's actually helpful. And I think that's IRS.gov. So let's kind of go over there. First of all, we're going to talk about some of the things that you can do online. You can get forms. There's all kinds of information on forms on IRS.gov, and believe it or not, I access it all the time. So the more familiar you get with IRS.gov, the more information you can get directly from there. Is it always correct? Answer is no. It's not. Or it's one-sided and they just tell you one piece of the pie. It's still a giant collection agency. They're not on your side. I hate to say it. But if you think the government is on your side, more often than not, no, they're not. They're supposed to be serving the public, but they follow their mission more closely than serving the public. IRS, if you're listening, call me and I can correct some of the stuff on your website. But you can change your address. Why is it important to change your address? Because of all the letters the IRS sends, people get blindsided all the time by bank levies, wage garnishments. But if you move frequently, and especially if you're not filing tax returns, they don't know where you are. And they're using the last best information that they have. So if you file new returns, even if it's a zero return, and put a new address on there, or you can do a Form 88 522, change of address. The IRS is good at losing forms, however, so, or you can do a written statement, or you can call us by telephone, verify it, and give them your new address. So, and this is just some of the frequently asked questions about this, about a bunch of different questions, but what I want to focus on here is getting your transcripts. You can go online to IRS.gov. There's a way to order your wage and income transcripts. So your wage and income transcripts has all of your W-2 to 99 information. That's really what you want to focus on. I've talked about the different kinds of transcripts before. You can dive into this more. You can use a form 4506T to request a transcript of your tax return, and then check for W-2s. They have this information for up to 10 years. However, for 2023, they still don't have this information available. I know, I checked yesterday. So it should be available by the end of May. That's when it was available last year. But again, that time period for that is actually getting longer and longer. Myself, I have a couple W-2s that or 1099s that I'm expecting to be on my transcript that I didn't receive. So I'm making sure I'm on an extension. I'm caught up with my taxes, but I'm making sure I have all the correct information before I file my return. So I just filed an extension. I'm waiting for that wage and income transcript to verify that everything is included on my tax return, so I don't have any surprises. Again, keep copies. Whatever you get, keep a copy, save it. I don't care if it's a digital or a paper copy. If it's digital, keep it on the cloud or somewhere where you can access it that's secure. But one of the easiest ways, if you have an IRS.gov account, you can just go right in there and get that information together. So again, there's a lot of other questions here. Can I file an amended 1040X electronically? So the 1040X means that it's amended. A lot of other questions that we're going to answer here, but we're going to stay on topic and jump to a different tab here. So an IRS online account, going to irs.gov, setting up your account. How can it help you? What information is there? That's really what I want to hone in on today. And so that's through an individual. You set up an individual online account. When you do that, you can log in anytime, and you can get all kinds of information about your tax account. So I do think this is a huge improvement for the IRS. So where they deserve it, I want to give them kudos. I want to say good job. This is actually helpful for your average consumer. Giving out adjusted gross income over the phone, they won't do it. They'll mail it to you, but if you've validated yourself online, you've gone through the hoops, you can get adjusted gross income, you can get economic impact payments, you can get all kinds of information on recovery, on different payments and credits. You can see what you paid in and estimated tax payments. You can see any balances owed, and you can see them updated to the current calendar day. So when I call into the IRS, I can get the amounts updated to the current calendar day. If you look at your transcripts, the transcripts even say do not use this as a payoff balance. And be careful, because when you look at the interest and penalties up to the current day, if you send in a check, it's going to take so long for the IRS to process that check. Interest and penalties continue to accrue, so you might still have a small balance on some periods. But if you pay online, again, it still takes some time to process. Again, this is why we always, when we do a payoff balance, we always get the interest and penalties calculated out to a certain day. You can see your payment history and any scheduled or pending payments, payment plan details, digital copies of select notices, and they're trying to improve this. You can get transcripts. So again, this is a lot of information. So you can get account transcripts. You can see every transaction every code, every bill that's added to your account. You can see when your account is placed in a hardship status, when it's taken out of a hardship status, when an installment agreement is put on your account. You can see when a hold is placed on there for a bankruptcy or for an offer in compromise. There is a lot of information on these account transcripts. You have your tax return transcripts only available for the past 3 years, though, but it has a breakdown line by line, everything on your tax return. You could also get, so really it's account transcripts, tax return transcripts, and then wage and income for the last 10 years. Account transcripts you can get as far back as the tax is still, as long as there's still a tax and a balance on the account, you can get them. Now, as far as the, there's one other called record of account, and it's just the tax return transcript and the account transcript mixed together, so it's just a little more confusing. How do you get started? You have to go through the process. So you have to collect video accounts, create or view your account button, create the account. You have to go through the process for authentication. So again, it's a rigorous process because it accesses so much personal information. It is a good thing that they have a very thorough process. Again, like part of it is doing a face scan. And it is pretty intrusive. So not everybody wants to do this. And I get it if you don't want to do this. You can create a profile, but one of the biggest issues out there, and I tend to lean into tech. You ask my kids, they think I'm in the Stone Age still when it comes to most tech or new apps, etc. But this is what they do offer here is very, very helpful, and especially getting an identity protection pin. If you have anybody that is your family member, an ex-spouse, which we do see too often, filing tax returns for somebody, doing it electronically without their permission, etc. If you have anybody, excuse me, if you think anybody's using your identity, you can do a PIN on your account, and that locks it up so people cannot use and abuse your account and cause damage on your tax return. So again, a lot of information available here. Don't hesitate to get more information about this, and we're gonna continue on when we come back and wrap this up for you. But again, it's very helpful, and given the direction the IRS has been going, I think this is a huge improvement. So stay tuned after this break and we'll wrap it up for you. Welcome back, everybody. So we're talking about some of the things that you can do to really help you deal with tax issues, stop, address identity theft, and other issues once you have your IRS.gov account set up. Again, it is very intrusive if you have privacy concerns. There are other things you can do through the IRS website. So this isn't just strictly IRS.gov, but just want to, they have been putting a lot of effort into improving the website, making it more helpful. And again, I think this can help people get answers and information without paying a lot of money just to try to get some answers. Now, like I said, this is still coming from a tax collection agency. They do not go over very clearly all your rights. Their offer qualifier is bad. Gives a lot of bad information, false positives. It's not a good thing, but program. But going through this interactive, there's a lot of different things on IRS.gov that you can get. So this is something that they've added recently, the interactive tax assistant. And this is that you can ask questions and they'll try to respond to you. So if you get on, a lot of companies do this where they have like a little chat in the corner, and someone will pop up when you go on IRS.gov and they'll answer some questions. So these are basic, it's an AI system, but it can answer some basic questions. Who needs to file a return? What is the best filing status to use? So it goes over filing statuses. Who can claim a dependent? Who's eligible to claim a credit or certain deduction expenses? So it can give you information, answer basic questions. And they're trying to improve that as we go. So you can play around with that, see how that works for you. You have an earned income tax credit system because this is such a big issue. It can really help people, but it can also cause a lot of problems with people claim it incorrectly. So they have this assistant. Again, are you eligible to claim an ETC? Do you have any qualifying children or relatives? Estimated amount and the filing status they should use. So if you are doing EITC, still talk to a tax professional, but you can get some questions answered here going directly to IRS.gov, and you don't need a tax account to use some of these services. Where's my refund? They have a little where's my refund tool to check the status of your tax return. The IRS gets bombarded by people just wanting to know where's my refund, where's my refund. Within 24 hours of e-filing, you can use this to check the status of a refund, where is it going, and make sure it's being processed correctly. Again, if you file a paper return, it's longer, about 4 weeks, maybe a little bit longer. But again, if there's an update, it will just update overnight. So there's no reason to bombard it and check it multiple times in one day. It's only going to have one answer per day. But again, very helpful instead of, again, we get plenty of calls and we can't really help them. We don't charge people to do that. And it's not worth paying an attorney or any kind of firm to go check on it. So again, learning to use these tools can be very helpful, answer a lot of questions, especially if you're anxious for that refund. So again, this goes to our individual account online, and some of those that we've already covered. This is where you go in, you log in, you create your account, you go through the authentication process. Again, view balances owed, payment history, schedule payments, cancel scheduled payments. Again, new feature for 2024 if you just don't have the money. This can affect, though, when you cancel payments, either you need to make them up very quickly or, again, within 2 to 3 months, it will default your installment agreement. So be careful about that. The IRS is not very flexible with their installment agreements. If you call and say, hey, I need help, I couldn't make this one, there is some give. If you pay less and then try to get caught up, and every time you don't pay the full amount of the payment due, it's like strike one, strike two, strike three, your installment agreement is gone. And they'll send you notices, they'll send you letters, hey, this is about to default. And be careful about defaulting too many installment agreements. It can get to the point where they demand that you do a 433D where they take the money automatically out of your bank account. Or it can get to the point where they just say, okay, no more installment agreements for you. They can take that resolution off the table, which is a very scary thing. Then your options are limited to a hardship status if you qualify, or an offer in compromise if you qualify. So again, don't use it or abuse the different options available here. So you can get transcripts, as we talked about, view or create payment plans. So this is if you have IRS.gov set up and you have a simple, a low balance, really below 25,000, you can go and set up your own payment plan. It's pretty basic. One thing to be aware of when the IRS is doing their payment plans now, and this is a recent change, they are adding in interest and penalties over the next 6 years on most payment plans. So depending, they're assuming the interest is going to stay at 8%, and they're going to have you pay out for 6 years until the balances are paid off. So that's kind of a scary thing. It makes that the monthly payment go up substantially. I just had one yesterday. Now, you can get copies of some, not all IRS notices. You can view key data from the last tax return, including AGI, which again is very helpful when filing on electronically. Validate bank accounts. Save multiple accounts. Eliminate the need to re-enter bank information every time they make a payment. So you can set up bank accounts that are approved, validated. And so it's just like when you set up payments to your bank. Once you have it set up, it, through Zelle or other features, it can, or if you do automatic payments, makes it very easy for your bank to make those payments. And then view and approve electronically signed power of attorney and tax information authorization. So there's a process now where you can do an electronic signature for a power of attorney. The IRS is still working on it. Let's put it that way. It's a work in progress here. They set up this program. We tried using it. It failed. They rejected every one that we submitted. There are some people that are doing it, some firms that are doing it, but it's still a pain. And the process is tedious enough. If you call in and fax in a power of attorney, they still will not accept an electronically signed power of attorney. So we try to move as quickly as possible. We don't wait for a power of attorney to process before calling the IRS. Again, I mentioned this before, setting up an identity protection PIN. Again, it's a 6-digit number. You use that instead of, or prevent someone else from using your social security number or ITIN to file a tax return. They also have to know your PIN. And if they don't know it, they can't do anything once you set that up on your account. Just make sure you don't lose it. You don't just forget about it. So you can do this online. There's a tool online where you can get an identity protection PIN. And this tool, January through mid-November is most of the year, and then around mid-November they do an update, a yearly update. So again, to do this, you can request a PIN through IRS. Again, it's a long, drawn-out process. If you can do it online and set up your account, it's much easier to do so. But you can request a PIN, and if you report identity fraud on your case, you can be assigned one. Again, that's a much longer, more in-depth process. If you suspect there's any kind of identity theft, I'll report it. Well, do your PIN first, report it, and then make sure you have that PIN to protect your account. So I do like that they have a lot of safeguards in there for you. I don't like how intrusive it is. On IRS.gov, you have IRS free file. If you have a very simple return, things are basic. If you have any questions, though, they're not going to give you any tax advice. They can't steer you in the right direction. Unlike a tax preparer or CPA, they can't make recommendations to you. It's pretty much plain vanilla. If you have a very basic direct return, you can use some of these free file options to get your taxes done for free. This is, I think, a very valuable program that they have going is the VITA program. So volunteer income tax assistance, counseling for the elderly. So these are IRS certified volunteers spread out across the country. They work with elderly families, working families, disabled, and people where English is limited. So non-native speakers. They also have a similar program for the military called MilTax. free return preparation, electronic filing, etc., with no income limit. If you're in the military though, and as a veteran myself, I used this when I was young and didn't have much. Straight out of the Navy, I would go and get my taxes prepared for free on base. But it's great for young guys that don't have any deductions. They haven't purchased a house, made any investments. But if they're smart, they'll start doing that. And again, no income limit, but if you have more complicated returns, I would not use this. Again, you're getting what you pay for. If it's very straightforward and basic, use it all day long. And this is something I have, again, the direct file pilot, where they're allowing you to file your tax return directly with the IRS. Again, if you have a basic, simple return, go for it. If you have any questions or somehow the IRS system messes up your return, you're still going to be held responsible. And the IRS is not going to hold themselves responsible. That's just the way it is. The government's not going to be responsible for their own mistakes. And then they do have a program to find an authorized e-file provider. They don't vet these people very much. It's just, have they set up so they file e-file returns. There's tips for choosing a tax preparer. I've gone onto this quite a bit. Avoid unethical ghost return preparers, so people that show up if they've only been there a short while. I mean, if you're trusting your brother, your uncle, your cousin, and he might not be around, or whoopsie, and make sure they have a good history. Make sure they understand what they're doing. Get second opinions. You can use an IRS directory, but if you want someone that's been vetted, give us a call. Again, like I said, we have people that we work with, and there's times where we work with someone and they get sick, something happens, and we know, and we pull back and stop referring to them until things get resolved. But having a personal connection, someone that knows them, has worked with someone for a long time, is worth. Again, that's a very valuable connection that can help you long term. Just a word on that, and this is, if you have someone that's been preparing your taxes for 20, 30 years, make sure they have a backup plan in place. If that's what they've been doing forever and you've been relying on this guy forever, be aware that he needs to either have someone else in his office or some kind of plan in case he gets sick, can't handle the taxes, because we see that a lot too. Someone got sick and died, no plan in place. They can't get their documents, or they don't know how to get their documents, and it's a mess. So again, that was a lot of information about IRS.gov and the different programs that the IRS has on their website to help you out. There is a lot of help, and it's meant to be there. It's meant to help tax preparers, and believe it or not, the IRS is trying to improve that, to improve their overall service. It's one of the big things that they've been touting. But if you have questions, feel free to give us a call, 520-485-7371, or reach out to us online at guardiantaxlaw.com or through our Facebook, YouTube. All these shows are being posted on YouTube as well for your ease of access, and to kind of go through these videos, because what I'm talking about today, you might not need for 6 months to a year or 2 years. And we'll be trying to update this information as we go along. So again, thank you for watching. It always pays to be aware of and familiar, because you're always going to have to pay taxes. This isn't going to go away, unfortunately, until you hit retirement and you just don't have a filing responsibility. But even then, making sure everything's wrapped up is definitely worth the peace of mind of doing it right and giving yourself and your family that ability to not worry about taxes. So again, if you have any questions, reach out to us. But I hope you're all out there have a great day, and happy Thursday, getting closer to the weekend.